Hey guys, let's talk about last night's episode of The Walking Dead. And I actually did enjoy this episode. I know it was a little bit quiet with it just focusing on Beth and Daryl, but there were a few moments in this episode that I really enjoyed. First was the scene right off the top when they find this car and it looks like they're trying to strip it for parts and they're using it to strip it for pretty much survival gear. And then they hear a couple walkers and they decide to climb into the trunk. And what happens next is really cool. So they tie down the trunk of the car, but you can still see and hear the walkers, and you can hear that it's only a couple in the beginning, and then the sound starts getting louder and louder and louder, and it's just like a whole mob is passing by them. And there's some pretty intense moments because you never know what's going to happen. Are they going to realize that they're in the trunk of the car? Like, what's going to happen? And I really like that the intensity in that scene. And then they're literally there all night, and you can just see and hear the walkers finally starting to fade out. And then they finally get out of the trunk of the car, and it's back to business as usual, which is stripping apart the car to find stuff to help them survive. So that was actually pretty cool. So in this episode, we really got a bit of a backstory on Daryl, and we got to know a little bit about Beth. All we've really known about Beth is that she's Maggie's little sister. And she's pretty much shut down her emotional side over this past season. At the top of season 4, she was dating this guy, and then he went out to get food and he died. And there was like no tears, no nothing. She's pretty much just so used to the death that it rarely affects her. And then, of course, at the mid-season finale, her father died, and in such a dramatic way, with his head being cut off by the governor. So she's pretty much, gotten to that point where it's all about survival now. She doesn't have time to cry about anything. She's like, let's go find food. I want to drink in this episode. That's her mission in this episode, literally to go find a drink. And it's interesting to see Daryl has completely shut down. He's just, he's over it. Like, he can't deal with any more loss. And there's a really, really great scene between the two of them when he's like freaking out. So let me set this up properly. So they basically find this cabin, and her goal has been to have a drink. And obviously we know she's a young teenage girl or mid-teenage girl, and there are a lot of things that she still has left to do in life, and she's never had a drink. And that is her sole mission in this episode, is to go and find herself a drink. So they find this country club. They finally get to the point where she finds a bottle of peach schnapps, and she's about to drink it. She breaks down into tears. Daryl throws the bottle on the ground and is like, if you really want a real drink, let's go get one. So then they find this cabin, and in there they've got this moonshine, and they start drinking, and they're having this drinking. She starts playing I Never, which is a drinking game. And she's basically trying to get some information out of Daryl. And one of the things that we don't really know about Daryl is who he was before the zombie apocalypse. And everybody's always been trying to guess what he's done because he's such a survivor. He's completely like ready for anything. And so we all kind of like, he must have been a real badass before this. And when they're having this drinking game, she's asking him all these questions like, I've never been to jail. I've never done this. Like, things that are obviously negative things. And he starts getting really frustrated with her, and he freaks out and he starts yelling, and she's like, be quiet. Like, the zombies are going to hear you. And he just basically is pissed, and he's like, starts screaming. He's like, at least I never tried to kill myself like you did by slitting your wrists. And he's like freaking out on her. He's like, at least I'm not a mama's boy. Like, he's basically just saying, I didn't grow up in this lily white house with a picket white fence and this and that. I'm just not you, and I'm never going to be you. And he just starts freaking out. And then she's like trying to tell him that, it's not about who he was, it's who he is now, and that we all count on him. And he's like, he breaks down and he starts talking about how he let everybody down. I feel personally he feels he let everybody down by letting the governor roll up to where they lived and behead her father and destroy the group. And now they're off by themselves, assuming that they're the only two survivors. So he has this huge emotional scene with her, and she just hugs him from behind, and he just starts weeping and he starts crying. And it's like, this really dramatic moment for him. And I think for her too, because she even says, I'm not Michonne, I'm not Maggie. I probably shouldn't even be alive right now, but I still am. I've somehow found a way to survive in this crazy world, and I'm not just going to roll up in a ball of tears and like die. So I really like that about Beth. She's really showing that she's got the cojones to live with live in this world that they exist in. They don't have to keep looking over their shoulder to see if she's okay. She can survive. And I like that. And Daryl in this episode, we find out that he wasn't doing nothing before this. He was following his brother Merle around, and we all know who Merle was and what he was like. And so he was just basically going down a wasted path. He was doing nothing. He was achieving nothing. He talked about this story where he got drunk with his brother and this friend of theirs, and he almost got shot because they were making fun of some cartoon. Like, that is the kind of life he was living. He was hanging out with tweakers who would, who could kill him at a drop of a hat if they were having a bad day. So now, in this reality, he's somebody that everybody looks up to. He's somebody that people rely on. He's somebody that people go to for advice, and, they see him as a leader. So I feel like he struggles with that because he was kind of just flailing before this, and now he's like really somebody who they look for and they look up to. And by the end of the episode, they burned down the cabin that they were sitting in, and it's sort of a way to say, okay, that's enough of the past. Let's move forward with this new world that exists with the two of us, because we don't know if anybody else is alive, and they're sort of more on an even playing field now. You know what I mean? So she doesn't have to keep begging him to respect her or look up, like, he doesn't have to take care of her, and she can also just be like, I want to follow you and not make it seem like you have to look after me, kind of thing. So I really enjoyed those scenes. I do feel that they probably could have merged another storyline with theirs. Like, I don't think that they needed to have the entire hour just based on the two of them. But I think what I'm enjoying with this fourth season and this half of the season is we're really starting to get some good character development, because let's face it, up until this point, we haven't known anything about Beth. We've known some stuff about Daryl, but we don't really know anything. And we're four seasons into the show, and for not to know enough about some certain characters, that's not good. And I feel like they're giving us these backstories, which is important. So ultimately, if they stay, it's gonna mean something. And I found it very interesting that Beth said, "You're gonna be the last man standing," and I think that terrifies Daryl, because he wants to be around people. And that's obviously, you can see he's completely closed in because he's lost his family. And so for her to say that, that's very interesting, because, yeah, he'll survive and he'll do just fine. But he's been alone for so long. And I think that him having this family now means a lot to him. So we'll see what happens there. Now, throughout this episode, the building up of this, and we knew that this deep conversation was going to come between the two of them, which was a good conversation. But I just hope that we're not trying to go to like a romantic pairing between these two, because I do find that she is still a young girl and he's definitely older. And now that Carol's back, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because he knew that she was kicked out of the jail, but I don't think anybody else knew that. And we'll see what happens when they reunite, because I think Carol has feelings for Daryl, and I think that he genuinely likes Carol. Whether there's romantic feelings there or not, who knows? But, I hope that Beth and him will just have sort of like a big brother, younger sister relationship, and not stemming into something romantic, because I do think that she's too young for him. So, outside of that, I thought, the episode could have had a couple more people, but they chose not to. We'll see what happens next week. And so let me know what you guys thought. Leave some comments down below, and tell me how you think the rest of the season is going to play out. I did not see scenes for next week, because I try not, when I'm really enjoying a show, I try not to watch any spoilers, see any scenes for what's coming up the following week, because I really want to be surprised. I want nothing to give anything away for what's going to happen in the next week's episode. So I don't know what's coming up. But, you can tell me what you think is going to happen with the remaining characters, what's going to happen when they all meet up at Sanctuary, if they all do. Yeah, let me know what you all think. And we'll see you next week. Okay, bye, guys.